If you could rewind the clock back to the day when you said, you know what, I'm going back to Indiana, and everything in the universe was exactly the same as it was that day, could you have decided differently? And if so, how? Can you hear us, Jenny?
Yeah.
All right. This is like our conversation about free will, and we all had to think ahead of time if we were willing to record it because we weren't sure if we freely chose that or not. So what's the damage? What was the damage, Amanda? What was your attempt to?
Well, I said that, we have conversations about how people lack empathy for others, and that you felt like one of the hurdles in people being able to really empathize with other people is a false idea of free will, and that by free will you meant that people aren't really actually ever able to freely make a decision that's like truly independently theirs.
Do you remember what started it? Like, what were you talking about? That were you just like, Ben's such an idiot, he thinks free will is not a thing?
No, I don't remember how it came up.
I don't remember either. But it's perfect timing. I'm actually reading a book that talks about free will and choice quite a bit.
What is
but
it?
I'm like on the opposite end of the spectrum. The book is called Conversations with God, but God is like a euphemism for spirit, entity, whatever, universe, whatever term you want to assign to it. But they use like Western theological language to try to make it more applicable for Western readers, I guess. But I'm only about halfway into it. But in terms of free will, the premise is that like everything is free. Like everything is choice. Every thought, every action is
yeah, that's good news.
A form of creation.
Awesome. This means it'll be really, really easy to find it, right? So, I mean, if it's everything, if it's everywhere, so like instead of me saying, well, let me show you, can you just pick the most obvious example of free will that you've come across maybe in your life? And let's just look for it. The degree you got, the book you read.
I mean, anything from small everyday choices like that. Sure, the clothes I'm wearing right now, the coffee cup I'm drinking out of, to large decisions, living in Illinois, having a PhD in communication studies.
Okay, fine,
the coffee cup I'm drinking out of.
All right, so when did you pick it?
This morning. I pulled it out of my cabinet.
Is it the
to
same
fill
one
my
you
cup
use
of coffee? No.
So today it was a different choice. That's
day.
good. So what, did you choose it yesterday? Do you remember?
No.
Okay, you chose
Not
a different one. This is great news, right? We're right on track because you might have just broken the riddle. Can you tell me what the difference was between yesterday and today? Was anything different? Different breakfast?
I mean, really, it's just like whichever cup is like kind of at the front of the cabinet when I open the cabinet door to get a coffee cup in the morning.
Well,
easy access, maybe having a cup that's big enough if I want a little bit more coffee than like a smaller cup.
No, what we're looking for is the event that you can pinpoint where you had all of the options. They don't have to be all the options in the world. Let's not be ridiculous, but we're assuming you had multiple coffee cups up there and you weighed all these options in your mind and you thought, what's the right choice today? And you actually thought that yellow one is, but you know what? Fuck this. I'm going to show Ben free will as a thing. So you chose the red cup. I don't know what color the cup is, but in that moment.
It actually is red.
See, I'm good. Chances are we could back up like another step and actually dig into some of the reasons that you did choose that cup this morning. But the closer we get to the actual reason, the more you're going to go to what you started to go to, which is causes that are either prior to this morning and maybe you still had control over, like who put the coffee cup in front, or more likely keep winding the clock back and you'll realize, where'd that coffee cup come from? Who made it? I mean, you agree that if the coffee cup didn't exist, you wouldn't have used it this morning. And if it would have fallen off the factory line and shattered into a million pieces, you wouldn't have used it. And if I would have bought the damn thing before you, you wouldn't have used it. And if it was dirty and had like cereal all dried up in it, I could keep going. Tons of opportunities where it wouldn't have been your choice this morning, except I just used the word choice, and none of those would be your choice. The world spins perfectly. You open the cupboard, and right in front is this beautiful red mug. And as you pick it up, you have two choices. Either spend a bunch of freaking time understanding why you're picking this cup, or get on with your day and put some coffee in it, which, why are you drinking coffee?
These feel like separate things, right? Because there's interconnectedness. So like every choice creates another choice. Every creation creates another creation. The choices I made in the past of buying the coffee cup, the place that I was at to buy the, to be able to have the option to get this cup, having it clean, moving it, with me along all the places I've lived. So it's like all of the other decisions have created the decision, the free will to choose which coffee cup.
Right.
But those are
like so good, though,
the effects of prior choices.
Yeah, and I shouldn't be able to get away with the trick of just moving the clock back and saying, haha, the free choice was 5 years ago when you bought the cup, so that's still free will. So if what we're going to do is wind back and say, okay, granted, I couldn't have drank out of the coffee cup this morning if I hadn't bought it freely 5 years ago. So then we've just started over, but now we have to examine at least one of the events that was pivotal, necessary. You couldn't do without it if, in fact, your free choice this morning was to use the coffee cup. The world had to align. I mean, it wasn't just that you had to buy it. The quick list of examples I pulled out were but a few of the billions of things in the universe that had to go just right for it to be that coffee cup and one instead of one that says badassest Jenny Doctor in the world. Like, chances are that morning, if that cup would have been sitting next to the red one at the coffee cup shop, there's a lot of cups you would have bought totally different that would have blown your freaking mind, and you would have been like, forget Reddy Magoo over here. I'm taking the coffee mug I want. All those might have been freely chosen, except what made you choose the red one and not the one next to it. I mean, something free. We got to be able to find the free. And if it's just, well, I don't know, it just kind of happened in the dark, we just got way off track then. We're talking about free will. We're talking about a list of options appears in front of us, and we've skipped the beginning because I'm willing to come all the way to your side. The beginning is to say, well, geez, imagine the trillions upon trillions of options that weren't available to you this morning. Your free will was already reduced to like 4 or 5 if you wanted to like drink out of a cereal bowl or something, right? You didn't have many choices. I'm coming all the way to your side and saying, who cares? If you have a free choice out of 5, you could still find some free will there. If every time we get close to it, what we really end up saying is, I just chose. I don't know. I just like grabbed the cup and moved on with my day because I'm not some sort of weirdo that debates for 4 minutes about whether or not to use a red or a blue coffee cup. Who cares?
Right, because it's not, maybe this example isn't the best example in terms of like, impactful choices where you're really contemplating
it gets
free
worse.
will that's going to have a bigger impact. But But I think what you're talking about is like everything is interconnected. A bird in Asia, flaps their wings and it affects something in the Amazon, hundreds of years later. It's like the concept of interconnectedness and string theory, that every decision is sort of the precipice for other interconnected decisions that have been made throughout time and history, some of which you've been part of, a lot of which you haven't. But you still, in the moment this morning, if I didn't want to use any of the coffee cups in my cabinet, I could have went to the store and bought a different coffee cup. Hell, if I wanted to go get on an airplane and fly across the country and shop for coffee cups in Thailand, I could have done that. I had the free will to make that decision. But
yeah, and all those, I like this path. Like, let's walk down that path. What would have been different had you decided, you know what, damn this, I'm going to show Ben. I'm going to buy a new coffee cup. And I'm not going to use this one. I'm going to use the new one. What would have instigated that process? Because if the answer is, I'm going to show Ben, or the answer is, I don't know, it just happens in the dark, or the answer is, yesterday this thing cut my lip because there's a chip in the edge of it and I'm just fed up with it, or the answer is, I just need to get out of the house. We're getting farther and farther away from this thing that when we think of free will, what we really think of is, every option on the planet is in front of me and I get to choose. And that's silly. So what we really think of is, okay, some options are in front of me and no one has a gun to my head. And what I'm saying is, why do we stop there? That should be the beginning. And then we should say, okay, well then where was the freedom? What was your list of options and what made you choose the red one instead of the blue? And instead of the response, which sounds automatic, which is I made a list, I weighed the benefits and the costs, and I decided, well, the red one has more benefits. I can fit more coffee in it. What the heck makes you want more coffee today? Why is that a benefit and not a a downside. And by the way, none of this probably happened. Again, this was probably more, I have 7 trillion things to do today, even more depending on how intricate you want to be. I move my toe an inch, I take a step, right? And I don't have time
Right.
before I do every one of these things to say, okay, should I pick my left foot up to go downstairs first or my right foot first? I don't have time. I'm an evolved human, and my goal is to just get on with life, which means I need to feel like I choose stuff, because otherwise, oh my God, I would be stuck in my own head all day. I'd be like, what's going on? Why am I a zombie walking around? Who's making these decisions? I need to feel like I'm controlling things, but I still have never found, as you zoom all the way in, that moment when anyone chooses. And I'm right with you. I go to a more obvious counter example to mine. I'm trying to come your way, which is I'm sitting at a red light in the right turn lane, but I can go straight and I need to get to work. And I think to myself, screw Ben, I'm going to show him free will's real. And I turn on my right blinker and then I turn right. I don't need to go right. I'm just turning right to show you, right? And I stop there instead of using that as the starting point and say, why did you turn right? Because I was going to show Ben. What made me want to show Ben today? I don't know. What if I would have been late to work? Well, I probably wouldn't have done it. What if there was a cop behind me? I probably wouldn't have done it, right? It's always contextually situated in such a way that your brain's way too fast for you to keep up. But my God, that sounds scary and awful. And I prefer to just kind of feel like I'm walking around and we're actually picking, like, really, you were kind of right at the beginning. Normally people pick life-altering things, and as much as you think that it'll hold water more there, it falls apart even quicker if you were to say PhD, moving to Indiana is one you said earlier. But you could focus in on those and try to find the free will, and I think you're going to find more and more that, like, well, it was, why Indiana? Why not Alaska? Oh, family. Oh, did you choose that? Damn it. Okay. New. Let's try something different. How about your PhD? I mean, was it just free will, or was it you had applied to a number of places? Why DU of all the places that you could have applied to? Probably prior events that made you think that just happened to fall in your line of sight.
Okay, but it feels like, I mean, sure, every decision there's influences, right? There's context, there's influences, there's cultural influences, there's interpersonal influences, there's intrapersonal influences. There's always influence, but that doesn't negate the choice, that there's still a free choice to be swayed or to be moved by the influences or not, to acknowledge the influences or not, to see them or not.
How do you decide? I think what you're saying is sometimes, very seldom is the answer, everything in the world, my family needs me to do this, it would help them, I want to do it in my heart. Things that make you add value to a yes decision versus a no. They usually happen in the dark, but us mindful people, like you're describing, hopefully take the time to slow down and examine them. That's what mindfulness is really all about. We've talked about that. Those of us that do that decide, like, okay, upon weighing these options, sometimes I decide that my own personal happiness is more important than the obligations to family. But I don't know of very many people outside of psychiatric conditions, which again makes free will go away even more. We probably just totally agree with each other that it's totally gone when somebody's psychotic or certain states of mind we get in. Nobody chooses to be depressed and all of the things that spin forward from that. But that it's tempting to just think that those things all exist, and that the weight that you put on something to make you say yes, as opposed to the weight that you put on something that might have made you say no, is all, maybe that's where the choice is. Like, did you decide to move to Indiana given that your family was there and you had friends there and there was a job waiting for you there? And the no side, the negative, was like, I don't know what it was, but my guess is you did all this math in the dark mostly, thought about it a little bit, and then felt like you made a decision. But could you have chose differently if you rewind? This is where free will really comes into me. If you could rewind the clock back to the day when you said, you know what, I'm going back to Indiana, and everything in the universe was exactly the same as it was that day, could you have decided differently? And if so, how? Because the temptation might be to say
Could
yes.
Could I have decided differently? Is that
right?
Yeah.
So tell me how that would work. What informed your decision? You said you laid out pros and cons.
Right.
Do you remember?
And part of it was like choosing between options, but I made the choice to create those options. I decided what options I was going to have through applying for other jobs and
right. Crack cocaine availability and price was probably not even on your radar, right? I'm just taking a stab here. That was my guess is you weren't concerned at all about whether the city you were going to charged way too much for pool chlorine, or certain things that probably had very little to do with your life. You didn't even look it up, I'm guessing, right?
Right, no.
If you were in a house with a big pool, chances are you might have. All the other options you could say,
right.
Well, if I was going to plop down in an area where somebody near me was doing meth, I might want to know whether they were enforcing those laws really hard there. All that's happening in the dark, but you're saying some of these things stood out to you. You didn't just put two things in a hat and reach over and say yes or no and pull those out. Even there wouldn't be free will because you'd be trying to flip it upside down to get it, right? Like, well, I'll just take it away and that'll prove it. What would make you think you should choose out of a hat? I'm saying, what made the things that were important to you that you even thought of, like, ooh, I should consider whether this will help my family. Ooh, will I be happy here? Ooh, do I know the area? Will I feel out of place? Is there employment for me? Do people appreciate me there? Do I have bad memories? Are there traumas tied to spaces that are affecting my decision and the feelings I have? What made those things important? Because if it's not free will, I think that's what you were saying. I freely choose to love my family. I freely choose to enjoy chocolate more than vanilla ice cream. And maybe that's where we would digress, where I think you can affect, once you recognize it, you can certainly affect your likes. But nobody gets to choose what turns them on or what is valuable to you and what made you finally say yes. So what you're saying is, yeah, I choose that. Tomorrow I feel a certain way about my brother today. Tomorrow I could just wake up and say, you know what? Today I'm not going to like him. And then you could make the decision about whether to move to Indiana and come to a different conclusion. But you would have to do something tricky with the things you evaluated to make that decision, if that makes sense. To be honest, sometimes the next day you do feel different. Sometimes overnight, or you have a meal, or you go, oh, I hadn't even thought about, and then suddenly your whole decision is changed. But you don't decide what to think about next that affects your decision. So the point of the experiment that says go back to this morning and either when you moved to Indiana or go back to this morning when you open your cupboard, and whatever happened that made you say red mug, if you think that you could somehow wind the clock back and have everything be the same, the breath you took right before you opened the cupboard, the exact second you woke up in the morning, the dreams you had last night, the thing that was on your mind, what you're going to have for breakfast, your schedule, everything. The universe is the same. Every atom is in the same spot. But you're going to find space for your brain to decide, grab the yellow cup. That's an extraordinary claim. So there's got to be some extraordinary definition of how that could even happen.
How long have you been thinking about all of this, Ben?
I'm writing it. It's the last chapter of the book. So
okay.
I'm using it as a way to get around the idea of the drug war. Just to add to the final pieces, if you think people are choosing to use drugs, we're not choosing anything. So where Amanda and I had talked a little bit is about our education, about this privilege we have because they gave us these pedigrees, these PhDs, and they open doors. People are like, oh, you're a doctor? Well, crap, here's some money, have a job. Right? That's bizarre to a junkie like me, somebody that's been treated like shit and told you're untrustworthy forever for your whole life, who can lean on that. And as much as I'm everything in me has wanted to say, fucking finally, fuck them all, take it and be proud of it. And, well, you should have got a PhD too. I looked everywhere for the space to take credit for a lick of it. And as an addicted person, a criminal on the autism spectrum, I didn't choose any of those things, but I'll be goddamned if they didn't affect everything that happened in my life in totally invisible ways where I thought I was just going along choosing stuff.
Was it a choice for the things to be invisible?
No. And what's wild is I think you and I, again, with the mindfulness, have probably come to the same conclusion.
Right. I'm thinking a lot about mindfulness through this.
When you see it, you can't go back. The ice cream truck song, that Do Your Ears Hang Low, is how we all learned it. And it's actually the name of a racial slur is built into the title of this ice cream truck song. As soon as I heard that, I was like, well, I probably will never own an ice cream truck. But if I do, I'm not going to play that song. Not because I'm now morally superior, but just because I learned something I didn't know that changed my mind. And when I tried to say, change it back, I was like, well, well, there's a trick, right? I can't. Whatever is valuable to me and whatever I decided, like to say I could just change it back is to pretend that with all that stuff, the 99% of our consciousness that's unconscious, that's going on behind the curtain, as much as I want to know what's going on there, I don't know. I know less now than I did 10 years ago. I feel comfortable about it.
But you could choose to ignore that sort of conscious awareness and to just move into a space of ignorance, avoidance, complacency. Again, there's still a choice there, whether you're choosing to ignore it, choosing for things to remain invisible and to not be consciously aware of the choices that you're making and how they might be impacting future choices, context, other people, environment.
So can you give me an example of one or the other in your life so I can pick at it a little better? What is something you would walk by on the street that you wouldn't be able to ignore? Physical assault, maybe, like a man beating a woman and you're with 3 other people. So
okay, that's a good example. Literally, like 2 weeks ago, right behind my house, there was literally a couple and a guy was like beating a woman and she was screaming.
And it's happening right now, right? It's not like when that goes down, you're like, give me a couple days to think about what I should do.
Right.
That's what I wish I could do. What happened, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I came outside. My boyfriend Ryan and I were both out here, and I heard it. I heard them arguing, and I waited a couple minutes. I kind of walked towards the fence to see like how close they were on the other side of the house. Didn't say anything yet, and then kind of walked back towards my back door to get my phone in case I needed to call the police, and then heard her screaming, and I guess do what?
We're rushing through a lot of decisions that were made, but all of those in your mind, you're thinking, what would make you think to call the police in a situation like that? It's got to be your past, like the things you've experienced.
There were several decisions in that, but let me kind of go through. So
go ahead. Yeah.
So I went back towards once I heard her screaming, I literally was like, all right, fuck this. So I walked back there like
in that moment, you were like, "Oh, so, okay, yep." Now, decision.
Once I heard her screaming, because I knew that they were back there. I knew there was conflict.
Turn that off.
But she wasn't screaming yet. So in the moment when I heard her screaming, I could have because for example, Ryan was out here too. We both made different decisions in that situation. He wanted to go inside and shut the door, and
it's almost like he has a different past than you.
Right. And for me, and it was definitely that decision was influenced. One, when I heard the woman screaming, was like, fuck this, I'm not going to sit and watch some dude beat the fuck out of a woman right behind my house. So I walked out there, but then I noticed it was a black couple. And I was like, well, fuck, I'm not going to call the cops on a black man right now.
Why not?
So I walked out. Because that decision
Moral
definitely
decision.
was influenced by, and that in that moment when I was about to, was influenced by all of the stuff that I know that I'm consciously aware of the potential implications.
Could you just unlearn it?
To some degree.
Like in that moment, could you have just disregarded all that and just not felt that way? I mean, even with the scream, because that's what I described when you said the scream.
The decision,
what happens in my body,
right? I could have disregarded. I could have disregarded what was happening in my body and my feelings. Yes, I could have disregarded that and went inside and shut the door. So it was my choice to act on the feelings, to be influenced by the things that were. Choose to not be able to
override it, because you recognize that's a gift a lot of folks don't have. Even the best of us that like bust our ass in mindfulness often don't get to it, like Sam Harris says.
Right, it's a level of
if you could, though,
around. Right.
Would it be possible for you to be like, okay, my ability to turn this off is causing me to make a decision. I need to turn off my ability to turn it off. Could you turn it off? Or is it like unavoidably your ability to take that extra step that a lot of us can't comes to inform your decision? Because if at any point there's a spot we reach where you're like, well, I couldn't do that any different, that's just the way I am, then we're getting away from free will. And it seems like we keep going right up to it.
And I don't believe that. I don't believe that. You can choose something else. You can't, I don't think you can choose the influences that you feel that sway the decisions that you make, but you can choose how you respond to those influences.
Walk me through your decision, like your general decision-making process. Like
in that situation or in general?
Just generally, yeah, generally. Is it along the lines of what I was saying?
Depending on, Well, it depends on the nature of the decision, but that's part of my process. If it's a big decision, then I really need to weigh what potential outcomes might be. But a lot of it for me is like dropping into my body and sensing like, what is my body? What is my intuition telling me? What are my emotions telling me and teaching me about possibilities in this moment? And that is mindfulness practice. And that's years of right, and a lot of people don't, and that's where empathy, but I've always thought, I mean, if that were something if empathy and mindfulness were embedded curriculum in all primary education around the world, I mean, one generation would be all it would take to change the entire world, to teach those skills. It's intrapersonal communication skills rather than interpersonal. It's communication with the self. It's knowing how to learn the language of the body, of somatic knowing, of body knowing.
That's what's ironic about this. We're on the same page actually from roots to the end, but in the middle we lose each other in this key. What I'm really getting at is exactly what you're saying. What I do to my kid today, if my kid's 6 years old, can make the decision my kid will make when they're 32 to do something really awful, right? Or it won't. And if free will's a thing, it doesn't. But this is where my body makes me go back to those moments when I'm holding a tire iron, detoxing from heroin, desperate as fuck for bread like Jean Valjean was, about to smash out a window and steal a stereo. If I could rewind the clock back 22 years ago and put Ben in that same situation with everything in the universe being the same, detox, my life experience, the things I do and don't know, all of it, exactly where it was, what I had for breakfast, you're saying I could choose differently, and that's where I have to be a monster. Either I'm somebody that was a consequence of biology mixed nurture, mixed with nature, mixed with a whole bunch of bad rolls of the dice, and that's just how brains work, or I'm a monster. And not, by the way, a light one, but like a convicted 9 times and unconvicted about 25 more, and then add 30 misdemeanor charges to that. And granted, that's different now, but I didn't freely choose it anyway at any point to be like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to start doing the right thing now. Because like all humans, I never thought I was doing the wrong thing until hindsight. I never was like, I'm going to go be a bad person today, right? No human does.
Right, but also in that, there's assigning value and meaning of right and wrong, right? Determining what's right and what's wrong.
Yeah, right.
And
exactly.
I would reject that as well in terms of we're constantly assigning right, wrong, good, bad, this polarity of decisions and outcomes and experiences, which is the judgment piece of learning mindfulness and learning how to practice non-judgment, of seeing things as they just is versus assigning good or bad, right or wrong to those experiences and to those moments.
Some of them. Oh, yeah. Okay. I got you. From inside our own bodies. I like that. I'm with you.
Right.
But here's my final thought experiment that has been the groundwork. This is actually where I start, not finish, when I usually talk about this, is if right now Amanda decided to give birth to a kid and give it to us and asked us to turn it into a shoplifting, punch its friend in the face monster by the time that kid was 15, and you and I had something in us that I can't imagine being able to choose, but you think we could choose, where we would be willing and desire to do that. Can you and I envision together, especially, 2 brains are better than one, things we could do to this kid to virtually guarantee that kid is in prison by the time he is 18, 16?
Well, I think that we could make decisions that would create heavy influence on that kid. Yeah. But I think ultimately, again, the decision of the action would be for the individual person.
Which is, because what I'm thinking of is, I know people that, the situation you're talking about, there's the kind that are like you and I that are like, oh my God, and then you hear the scream and your biology really flips a switch and is like, look, you've got it, your adrenaline clicks on you. And then there's people that are probably like you were describing, who was with you, that were kind of like, yes, I get it. And if it gets bad, yes, but live and let live. But you and I both know third and fourth and fifth group of people who would not in the least be neither biologically affected nor even bothered by that sort of thing. And if those people chose through all their experience in life to think it's normal for people to assault one another, then that's fine. But I don't know how you could ever that sounds like a weird thing to even be able to choose. That's got to be the result of your life experience up to a certain point. And if those thoughts don't influence your decisions and you're still able to freely choose whether or not to punch somebody to solve your problems, this is where I know. I mean, I can guarantee you, I can get a kid to think it is not only normal and okay, but good to punch somebody else for certain reasons, and unacceptable and immoral to make a decision where you don't assault somebody in certain situations. I would have totally done a number on him, but I can guarantee you that I can make that happen probably by the time they're 10. You don't even need 16 years. If that kid's using free will when he then thinks he's, in his mind, literally the same circuits that fire when I think, I want to help this person that just stumbled and fell down and help them get up and clean them up and, take them to where they're going. I feel good about that. The same circuits would fire in that person's brain at times when they think, there's that person. I should go over and punch that stranger there. They're under 5 foot tall and they're black. I could program a kid to think that the right thing to do is to go punch that person. And then we could run the clock forward and say, well, maybe society would get a hold of him and somebody would explain, you have a free choice to change it. But that kid for the rest of his life is still going to stumble first and foremost on good thing to do. And then hopefully us mindful folks come along and say, recognize that fly in, recognize where it came from, and decide if you want to weed it out. Somewhere in there, we're just saying free will kind of shows up. And then I don't know if you feel like we've really grabbed a hold of it, but I feel like we kept zooming in and then just being like, we're pretty close. It's right there, right? Like, you can't see it. It's in the dark, but it's there. And I don't know. As somebody that's as privileged as I am, that's my struggle.
I'm trying to think. Are
you still here,
the
Amanda?
Influence again?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Well,
my question would be, even the situation with the fight, right? And even the discussion of morals and knowing what's right and wrong, where did you learn those morals of what's right and wrong? Does everybody have the same view of what's right and wrong, and how are those shaped? And was your decision not impacted by what you think is right and wrong? And even the decision to not call the cops because they were people of color, where did that come from? Is that something that
changed in the last,
For me, it's separating influence from still the maybe think of, for me, I think of free will as some synonymous with creation, right? I have with choice, creation, free will, kind of thinking of the three interchangeably. So separate from influence. There's always going to be influence. There's always going to be the accumulation of past experiences that's going to influence any moment in any given time. Experiences that you chose, experiences that were the outcome of other people's decisions. But still, even if it was the outcome of other people's decisions, you still made decisions in that moment to be in the place and the time, or how the other, outcomes affected or swayed or influenced you. So I think for me, it's separating the influence from.
So
what?
The first part, I was like, oh, damn, yes, we're on the exact same page. Tomorrow, I'm actually, in 5 minutes, when I get off the phone, I'll be different than I was before, a little bit, hardly noticeable. My wife will hardly notice. You better believe y'all haven't seen me since before the pandemic. When you see me, you're going to be like, the fuck, you old fart, you look different. It's been 2 years, right? That's just normal. I don't feel like I've changed, but over and over every day, we're a little bit different. I mean, that's what you're hitting on is, well, yeah, because not only has our physical biology changed, we've learned shit. We went a certain route and realized there's a cop running radar there every fucking day. Now, tomorrow, could I choose the speed? I could, quote, choose that decision could come to mind, but could it be free? Well, only if I can force myself to forget the cops there. Because as soon as I go to make the decision to speed, unless I can magically erase that memory, it is going to force its way in. And if it doesn't, then that's not my choice either. I'm the sort of person that apparently doesn't have a brain that pushes that cops first and foremost. With me, it's obvious why it does. But every time I look for the free will, we start right at the same point, you and I. 5 millionths of a second before the free will decision is made. And by the way, the neurologists have already seen it on the screen for 30 seconds, even though we haven't made it yet. And we're about to make this free choice that the neurologists could predict all the way through, and we'd be like, well, that's weird, but it was still free. And it's always, in my book, still that experience that makes us, if we make a different choice tomorrow than we did today, if yesterday I punched somebody in the face and tomorrow I don't, it's not because I knuckled down and I made the right free choice. It's probably either you had a little bit more blood sugar, you went to anger management and learned a little tool that put you a little bit lower. You just barely kept it under control. You got laid last night. You smoked a joint. I mean, there's 10 trillion things going on in your body.
Right, but those were all other choices, from blood pressure to anger management to all of them. Every single one of those is a choice.
We could back off and start over the experiment, but blood pressure is, even for the best of us.
So what you eat, environment. I mean, but I'm coming from a place of this belief rooted in, mindfulness, Eastern philosophy, spirituality, meditation type stuff that, I don't know, you have the choice, you have the free will to have control over body in a way that, like, as a evolved quote unquote society and humanity, we don't logically, intellectually grasp. We don't understand the ways in which we can control, manipulate, manifest, do things biologically in our bodies that
it doesn't work unless you begin.
Capable of doing.
You have to start with the thing that, like, oh shit, I have a body that, like, is doing all sorts of stuff that I have no idea about, and those things it's doing are affecting my decisions. If you get there, then you begin the mindful. But what you're doing through your mindfulness is figuring out a fucking way to get a hold of the things that you never even realized were out of your control. But holy shit, every day you figure out there's 3 more. I didn't even know my leg hurt, right? That's what's ironic about this is we're walking all the way up to the moment of free will, and we're agreeing on everything, including our bodies are out of control. I can't slow even mindful people can't turn their pancreas on or off. You can't make your kidneys or your liver or your blood vessels in your leg constrict or dilate, right? Even if you try to pick some out and work on it and eventually get there, nobody will ever have control of your whole body, because if you did, you'd get eaten by a lion 100,000 years ago. It all has to be in the dark. And luckily, you stumbled into this thing that says, check this out. There's stuff going on you don't know about. When you feel stressed in the morning, you slow down and figure out what's going on. You'll prevent later in the day that decision that you would have otherwise made, I guess freely in your book, even before you knew about mindfulness, to say fuck you to somebody or to eat an awful lunch that leaves you exhausted at the end of the day. But now that you know about mindfulness, you can move beyond this and find tools to establish something akin to free will. You can actually help yourself not be mean to somebody where in the past you used to be mean or whatever it is. But to me, that's what you're trying to get at, is you're trying to establish free will, having recognized that it never existed. Does that make sense? Like mindfulness begins with this premise. It begins with the premise that your body is doing all sorts of stuff that influence your decision-making ability before and without you ever having any idea of it. And if you don't take the time to deliberately recognize it, you'll just keep running on autopilot, and it's always worth your time to slow down and realize, why do I feel stressed today? Why did I wake up at 2 a.m.? Right? Hey, there's a pain in my leg. I didn't notice. Because if you don't, you're going to have all sorts of behavioral and emotional and decision-making issues that it'll affect that's kind of the point. If this didn't affect your ability to make a decision, why the fuck do you need mindfulness? What's the point of it? If you are just as good at walking through the world and you can choose to be kind to somebody the same way that you can be kind to them when you're in a good place, when you're in a bad place, why not just stay in the bad place? Why not just choose to not have your belly hurt? Right?
Exactly. Why not? And I believe that you can. I believe that the example you were given of, like, you can't decide for your pancreas to stop working or the vein in your leg. I believe that you can. I believe literally everything is a choice. I believe that takes a lot of incredible transformative inner work of being in body in a way that as a society we are not given, we're not taught those tools.
Yes. And a good teacher.
Or guide,
and first and foremost, you got to bump into somebody that reaches you with the message to begin with, because somebody could tell you 30 times your body's doing stuff you aren't recognizing, and if it's some yahoo you don't like, you're going to say, fuck off, stop talking to me when I'm on the bus, right? You first of all have to have the right person come along, say it in a way you understand, and you have to accept it. Then you have to want to change it. Then you have to fall into the right program. Then you have to have somebody help you even figure out how to do it. And if all of these things go perfect, what are you and I, about 10 years, you're more than I, 10 years into mindful practices, you'll start to just freaking barely get a hold of some things.
Right.
But unless you're a guru, you still have bad days. Like me, I still struggle with depression. It's not a magic wand, even for those of us that like have got a hold of it. So I think my affect still influences my decisions, even though I am mindful and I try to do that.
But
stuff.
even all the things that you're talking about require a certain level of class privilege to be able to access.
Right.
Do you have, I mean, how much time do you spend learning about mindfulness and learning to do all of those things? I mean, you were highly influenced by your trip you took to India. Can just anybody go take a trip to India and do that? I mean,
but also something that I learned with that when it comes to class privilege with mindfulness in India, that I learned when I saw one of the most striking things there that I remember learning and seeing and witnessing was the embodiment of mindfulness and meditation, and just the embodiment of being versus doing in people that I would attribute as, being the poorest, just poverty-stricken thing I've ever seen in my life, living in fucking tents of piles of mountains of trash on the side of the road. And but it was like the mindfulness and meditation and joy that I saw in those people was something I could only aspire to learn despite their circumstances. So I reject that sort of mentality that mindfulness is a tool that is really only available to people with class privilege. I saw the complete opposite of that in my privilege of being able to go to those places. And there is something to say about it wasn't a choice for those people to be born in India. It's part of the culture there. It's a lot more embedded in the culture, so they have more access to it, right? So that is something in the book. I would recommend both of you read this book that I'm reading. But the one thing in the book that basically it says, it's off the definitely on the premise and belief of reincarnation, but it's the only choice is that our souls. What the book says is our souls choose where we're going to be born and the family we're going to be born into. And everything else beyond those sort of predetermined choices that our soul makes before it reincarnates on Earth.
But that's all there is.
Everything else, right? Apart from those two things, where you're born and the family you're born into, everything
that's
else,
the decision you'll make at 48.
Apart from those. Right. Apart from all of those things, everything else is free will once you get into those circumstances. Everything else is, rather than the discovery of yourself, it's the creation of yourself. And despite the circumstances or the family or the place that you are born into when you enter this life on Earth, it's everything else is the creation. Everything else is your form from early childhood, and it's not conscious at that point because you're being so heavily influenced by environment and nature and nurture, right? But
always
I can think of instances when I was a child, dealing with shit that I would, make a conscious choice as a fucking 10-year-old to go and wander out in the woods when, there's chaos in my house and go retreat into nature and learn from nature at an early age that there's other.
How in the world did you? This is where.
Okay, so somebody, let's say somebody's kidnapped. I just watched the thing on child.
No, I'm saying that are scared of the woods, or that have been told stay the fuck out of the woods even though they live there, or who are googly by the woods and it's not peaceful. It's and all of those things happen way earlier, and then we walk together up to the point where you're I'm stressed today, I'm going to go walk through the woods. I just decided it. And what I'm saying is, without all of your past experience, or if any bit of it was different, if you would have grown up in the city, you'd be the woods. I don't go to the woods for peace. Not because you freely choose to do different, but because your experience to that point leaves you making a different decision. But this is gross. It feels like I'm just kind of a programmed biological robot. I like this idea of free will, which is the only reason our prisons are full, and the only reason people can sort of haul their way around not doing the stuff we're talking about, mindfulness and everything else, is people get to take credit for their good in life, and they get to abuse and spank and treat their kids like shit because free will always can stand in the gap to say, what I do to my kid today, it might affect who they are in 20 years, but you don't get to tell me that my decisions will make their decisions for them. And that's where I'm no, this is a calling out of people to say, abso-fucking-lutely. There is nothing else. accept what has happened to you in the past and what your neurobiological genetic makeup is. And if we're adding like a spirit, which would be the person behind the wheel, which I think might be the one thing you're adding, what I'm saying is that nothing's really changed. We've just moved the free will up to a person who is driving from the steering wheel over all the stuff I just said and apparently has access to it all. Like, you don't think your spirit doesn't know what you've been through or have memories, or right? So tomorrow your spirit will be a different spirit than it is today. And if I scoop out a big chunk of your brain where your memories about music are kept, you won't have those memories anymore, but you'll still be the person you are in many other regards. And your spirit it doesn't keep those memories because otherwise it could recall them. We're saying maybe the spirit has free will, I think is what you're getting at. And I'm saying the spirit only has access to what has taught it what good is, what has taught it what you want, right? The reason I would choose freely or not, whatever, I don't know how to say it that way because it sounds funny, but to shoot dope over and over repetitively and you didn't, isn't because, well, we both freely chose. That sounds so good because we can just move on with our lives, but it turns out it was the opposite of that. It was nothing but my past memories to that point, all the way up to trauma that made me use it initially and it worked, to the memories through my use that hijacked my brain to say, this shit works really good to make all the stuff you're trying to deal with go the fuck away, right? Even after it didn't, I still, like, it wasn't a free choice for day after day. So I'm always looking for the spots. Well, it's clearly not there. We could agree, like, I think you and I both agree, people that are in the midst of a psychotic break, like I said, don't have free will. We can probably agree that when people are addicted, they don't have free will. Once you're locked in prison, we can probably agree that many of the things that you used to have free will about, a lot of those are gone. Your stress level's almost going to go up. We could make a long list of a lot we agree about, but it sounds like you still feel like the spirit, the guy behind the wheel, for lack of a better term, has access to something other than past memories and genetics. And if that's the case, I'm just asking what it is.
I do.
What is it?
I do. I mean, I think I would call it like source. Amanda would probably call it God. I mean,
the same thing that makes people fly airplanes.
Collective consciousness maybe might resonate more, but I do. Yeah, that we have access to sort of inner knowing. Everything, every question about the universe and existence and all of the answers are inside of us. It's just a matter of learning how to access it.
Like, walk me through. There's two things I'm really wondering. I want to make sure I go back to the neurology. I want to start there. When is the decision made? Do we make decisions that the neurologists see in the MRIs, but we lie to ourselves for another 30 seconds and then tell ourselves the truth? But the man behind the wheel who has free will makes the decision 30 seconds earlier. The neurologists see it on the screen, and then we still don't know, quote, until we're let in on the secret. Or are the neurologists full of shit? The science gets bigger and bigger every year. We talked about it briefly on the podcast a while ago, that there's very few decisions you can make and being an MRI that you couldn't come out and a scientist show you right here, and right here. They can tell you what you're going to say before you say it. Or it's either 30 seconds lagged, like an old internet connection, or there's a free-willed spirit behind the wheel that doesn't tell us the truth until he's good and ready, but the neurologist can tell the second he makes the decision. I'm masculinizing your spirit over and over. I'm sorry. I keep calling it a he, the man behind the wheel.
I mean, I wouldn't separate the man behind the wheel or spirit isn't separate from, like, me. Like, I am that. I am spirit. I am source. Like, I am God. Yeah, like, all of that is in me.
So what I'm saying is you might answer it a little different because you agree that there is something separate that is called spirit or soul. And I am like, well, that's just how humans describe what we are, because it's really weird to be a big mass of blood and gooey guts that has to like eat and shit and all that stuff. It's just bizarre. What I'm saying is MRI. You're put in an MRI and they say, here's a list of 4 colors, choose one. And you get ready to push blue. And at the last second, you say, I'll show you motherfuckers. And you switch to yellow. And then as you're rolling out of the MRI, they say, you chose yellow. But we knew, like, they wrote it down in real time on video before you chose it. And you're like, what the fuck? Where was the decision made freely? Because that's as free as a decision you'll ever fucking see, right? Choose yellow, blue, red, green, or black. Well, shit, there's your free will. If the neurologists see it a full 5 to 30 seconds, depending on which one they're There's lots of different studies here, but the shortest is less than a second. The longest I've seen is like 28 seconds for simple things like colors. Where does that decision get made? Do you see it being made 30 seconds early, but we're just, for some reason, kept in the dark about our own decision? Or is it that the neurologists maybe have it wrong? Or
I think I would have different responses to that. I mean, I definitely think that science, Western sciences, don't have ways to be able to quantify and measure things like source and spirit and, you know, all of these things in the sort of spiritual world or spiritual realm, that just an inner sense of knowing is how those sort of relationships and communication happens versus pragmatic scientific logic and reason.
Yeah. And I'm cool with that. I always try to make this point because I sound adversarial to religion. Y'all might be right. That's usually something that only one side will say to the other. You'll very seldom hear a Christian or religious person say to an atheist, you might be right, because there's a lot on the line. But I don't have evidence that God doesn't exist. I don't know how it would follow from the premise that God exists that has anything to do with this specific holy book with all these weird stories that don't make sense being what God is. But even if we make that jump, we're missing the point. What I'm saying is, this morning you get up, you walk to that cupboard, you open it, you pull your red coffee mug out, and then you pick up the phone and you know that there's no video camera in your house, and you call a scientist and you say, what mug am I going to choose this morning? And he goes over to his readout and goes red. And you're like, what the hell? It's 7 o'clock and 15 seconds. What time did you see that readout? And he looks and he says, oh.
Sorry, my phone disconnected.
And then I'd be
I do have to wrap it up, though, because I'm like 10 minutes from the vet. But I wanted to say I would love for you to read this book that I'm reading, and then I would love to hash it out with you after we've both read the book. So I want your take on it, because it sounds like it's called Conversations with God. I think will provide answers that you've not come across before then to some of these questions. Not that they'll be the right answer, right, necessarily, but they might provide different perspectives as you work through this, you know, knowing and this sort of sense making that you're doing around the concept of free will.
I finally, for the first time, I feel at peace. And that's more what I was saying to you is like, I guess there's a spirit is what we're calling it. If you could take your spirit and throw it in, switch places with me in my body with that tire iron in my hand, and you didn't have any of your memories, only mine, what you're saying is you would have been like, oh, I'm not going to smash this window up as me with the same set of memories, the same body, the same experiences, except your soul instead of mine. That's more what I'm saying is there's where so I don't mind cracking it. I'll look at it. My guess is I've probably already read whatever the arguments are, because I did C.S. Lewis and everyone else for years, but I'm always down to look at something new as long as I can call you and let you about it.
And I would love to talk. I want to finish it, and if you read it, I definitely, because a lot of the concepts are new to me as well, and I came across it from a friend who's much more into the sort of esoteric space than I am. But
you gonna read it, Amanda?
In the book that I'm definitely grappling with.
Yeah, I'll read it.
No, we're all going to read it and have a Bible study? Now that I would publish.
God,
that'd be good.
It's not, it is definitely not like religious based. They use, again, like euphemisms of Western theology, the language, and they explain that in the beginning because they're writing it more for a Western audience. But it definitely is rooted. It comes from a core belief.
It's not brand new, is it?
Reincarnation. No.
Is it old enough I can get a used copy? I don't like supporting the Christian book industrial complex.
Yeah. It's
right.
not it would not be labeled as a Christian book.
Your assignment
it would be labeled as like spiritual, new age type of, that's probably how it would be labeled in a bookstore.
All right. And your assignment is to figure out what you could have done as I was swinging. The crowbar's already swung back and popped. Your soul pops into my body, but you don't have any of your memories. Your homework assignment is to figure out what it is in that moment, because it's not past experience and it's not genetics that would have allowed you to be a better, I guess you're saying you're a better person than me. What it is that would have popped up that would have allowed you to make a different decision.
Okay.
I mean that
I'll
nice.
think about
I'm
that,
not
but then
offended in the
also
least.
again, I wanna circle it back to, because you ended with like better person, so I want to circle it back to that non-judgment piece again. You're assigning good, bad,
stealing shit
good
is
person, bad
fucking
person,
somebody's day up.
You know.
Nah, we can come together there. If you're deliberately putting blood all over someone's car and they are gonna have a bad day because of you, those are decisions we should all work together to minimize. And so yeah, I think that was a bad day.
Every
I just don't think it was free.
Right. Okay. All right. I'll think about that more. But
I ask you because you might have the answer. You might actually have some thought that's like, well, the thing that would have been. Because that I only need to see it once. I don't need free will to be everywhere. It can exist with just one fucking example. I've just never heard one. No.
All right. Let me chew on it.
Fun.
Let me chew on it a little bit.
Yeah.
It was fun.
I'm down. When are you coming to Colorado? The river's high. The weather's getting hot.
Oh, God.